Welcome back to part 2 of Metalhead, where we're finding out the backstory as to the assassin Yassen Gregorivich and how he became an assassin for USSR. And then one day towards the end of summer, everything changed. It was a Sunday, no school. I was walking in the forest looking for wild mushrooms. It was quite late in the day and I was on my own. I was surprised quite suddenly when I heard voices. It was a man talking, and I recognised Ivor Krakow at once. "How dare you talk to me that way?" he was saying. "You should be so grateful to me." "Why should I?" This was Ilya. "You're not kind to us. You don't look after us. Since you came into our lives, we've never had 1 minute's peace." "That's no way to speak to your father." "You're not my father. My father was a good man, and you're nothing like him. I hate you." I'd crept towards the edge of the clearing and I arrived in time to see Krakow looming over Ilya, his face dark with anger. "You should respect me," he warned. There was violence in his voice. "Why should I respect you? You're a brute. You little swine." Even as I watched, Krakow lashed out. The back of his hand caught Ilya in the face, throwing him to his feet. He crashed down into a bed of leaves, but it wasn't to the end of it. Krakow reached down, got out his leather belt, and curl one end around his hand. "I'm going to teach you a lesson I should have taught you when I first moved in," he said. "I'm not afraid of you." Krakow lifted the belt and brought the end of the buckle crashing down 3 times on Ilya's stomach and chest. Ilya cried out, drawing his arms across his face to protect himself. There was nothing else he could do. I was already moving forward, furious. Ilya was half the size of his stepfather. He was 2 years younger than me, just a child. No child should be treated that way, ever. I saw a thick branch lying in the forest floor and snatched it up. Krakow was about to hit Ilya a 4th time, and I saw his arm rise in the air. I was behind him, all my strength. I brought the branch smashing down on the back of his neck. Now it was him who was thrown to the ground, landing on his knees. Ilya looked at me in astonishment, rolling out of the way, and Krakow turned round and stared at me. "What the?" he exclaimed. I will not write here what he actually said. "Leave him alone," I shouted. Ilya got to his feet. "It's all right, Yasha," he said. "No, it's not," I said. When I'd hit Igor Krakow, the branch had broken in half, but a sharp splinter had been left at the end of the piece I was holding. It was shaped like a short spear, and I slanting it downwards towards Krakow's throat. I saw at once that he was afraid. Like all bullies, he was also a coward. "What do you think you're doing?" I demanded. "How can you behave like that? He's my stepson. It has nothing to do with you. He's my friend. It's got everything to do with me. Are you going to use that?" He sneered at me. I jabbed down. The broken end of the stick went through to his neck and he squealed. I was only 13 years old, but I was big for my age. I turned to Ilya. "I could kill him," I said. "I could do it for you right now. No one would know. We could bury him in the forest." Did I mean it? I've no idea. Nobody would know. Maybe this was the first indication of what I was to become. Certainly looking down at Igor Krakow, who was now close to tears, I felt a wonderful sense of power. But it wasn't going to happen. "No," Ilya said. "It's all right, Yasha. Leave him alone." I pretended to consider, then slowly I lowered the stick. "All right," I said. I turned to Krakow. "But if you ever hurt Ilya again, I will tell everyone what I saw here. Just because you've got a medal, it doesn't mean the police will leave you alone when they discover you've been hurting a child. And I'm not afraid. If Ilya ever comes to school again with a bruise or a cut or anything else, I will find you and I will make you pay. I promise. Ilya, you're coming with me." "All right, Yasha," and the 2 of us left together. You may be wondering how all of this prevented me from becoming a helicopter pilot. It is now time to give you the answer. It happened a few weeks later and I will describe this as briefly as I can. Every year there was a special exam at the Alexander Bloch School. It was terribly important because 3 students who got the top marks would be sent to study at a highly respected academy in Leningrad. This was a fantastic opportunity, from a small, ordinary provincial town to a major city, from a very ordinary school to a brand new secondary school. It was almost like becoming a star in Hollywood. It was well known that the boys and girls who went there would never look back. They would become leaders. Whatever they wanted to do in their life, it would happen for them. I've already mentioned that I was a 5-star student without wanting to sound big-headed. I have to say that everyone in my school knew I was on the way. My teachers expected it. My parents, who'd originally come from Moscow, were thrilled by the idea I could escape from the village and claim a brilliant life. The other children were all rooting for me. When the exam started, I got about 20 good luck cards, most of them handmade. We were going to have a huge party when the results were announced. My friends would be sad to see me go, but they would be happy. That was the sort of kids they were. There were 5 exams in all. 4 of them couldn't have gone any better. I got exactly the questions I'd been hoping for, and I breezed. I was feeling confident by the time I arrived into the last exam. It was maths, my best subject. As I walked back into the gymnasium, which had been converted into an exam room for the whole week, I was completely relaxed. I wasn't even worried when I saw Yassen Gregorivich standing at the far end talking to a couple of my teachers. I should explain, there had always been an independent referee at every exam. By that I mean someone from outside the school that would check the results and check there was no cheating going on. The teachers at Alexander Block were so keen for their students to go to Leningrad, it's just possible that they might have helped them in some way. The outsider was there to make sure it never happened. Igor Krokov was a school inspector. He was a civil servant. It wasn't really that surprising that he was there. The exam began at 10 o'clock and finished at midday. There were 6 questions to answer, and I finished them easily, exactly the sort of questions I would have expected. Pythagoras, fractions, equations, mathematical diagrams. Although I finished early, I went through all my work checking I hadn't made any stupid mistakes. I won't say I was certain I got everything right, but I knew I'd done enough to make my parents proud. I didn't want to disappoint them. The teacher who was in charge called time, but it was Krokov who came round and collected the papers. I will never forget the moment he stood in front of me. The last time I'd seen him, he'd been on his back in the forest, gazing up at me with fear in his eyes. Now he was looming over me with total control. "Gregorivich," he said, and he managed to put more hate into that single word than I would have thought possible. I handed him my pages. There was a sick feeling in my stomach, but at the same time, I just thought it was the tension of the exam, and not also the loathing I had for him. What a fool I was. I was not chosen for the academy in Leningrad. It turned out, although I had excelled in the first 4 exams, I'd let myself badly when it came down to my strongest subject. In fact, I only scored 60%. It didn't seem possible, and when the results were put up for everyone to see, and the crushing sense of disappointment was still weighing down on my shoulders, I went to the head of maths, a woman in the department, who'd always be kind to me, and she looked at me sorrowfully across the desk. "I'm sorry, I can't understand it. Why didn't you finish the exam?" "But I did finish it." "You're mistaken. You only handed in 4 pages. Weren't you able to do the others in time?" "I handed them all in," I exclaimed. She shook her head. "You did very well. If you scored 60%, you must have got everything right. You'd have been well on your way to the academy. What a shame." She was trying to make light of it. But with a sinking, terrible feeling, I knew exactly what had happened. Krokov knew how much the academy meant to me, and he sabotaged my work by stealing 2 pages I'd been handing in. It was because of his revenge for what happened in the forest. Yes, I could have explained. I could have told everyone the truth. But do you think for a moment they would have believed me? Of course not. At that moment I felt a surge for Krokov that was stronger and more overwhelming than I've ever felt before or since. I wanted to kill him. I never guessed the next day I would have the chance. 10 years later, everything in my life had changed. I was no longer living in Russia. Both my parents were dead, killed by an accident in the factory where they worked. I was 24 years old and I had absolutely nothing in common with the boy who'd once attended the red brick school in Estov. I did not need to tell my story. All you need to know is that I'd been trained by an organisation that called itself Scorpia. This stood for sabotage, corruption, intelligence and assassination. I always wonder what that meant. The last of these was my speciality. I'd been taught how to use guns and knives and more peculiar weapons too. Crossbows, swords, sickles, ninja fighting fans, different sorts of poison. But actually I didn't need any weapon at all. I'd learned judo, karate, ninjutsu and many other martial arts. I'd been shown more than 50 ways to kill somebody, and in the time it took somebody else to shake hands. I was not unhappy with my choices I'd made, but maybe there was a part of my training too. There's a difference between murder and assassination. I did not act out of hatred or anger. I did not know any of the people I killed. They were simply names and photos supplied, sometimes with a date when the job had to be done by. If you're told to kill the enemy, do you stop and ask yourself who they are? Whether they're married, what they're thinking before the end of their life? No, of course not. You simply do what you're told. You might argue that I was not the same as being paid to kill people, that I never acted out of reasons of loyalty or patriotism. But then again, would soldiers join the army if they were not being paid? Any event now, I'd assassinated about a dozen people, including the Russian businessman who'd once imprisoned me, along with his very unpleasant son. The others included several criminals, a handful of corrupt politicians, a major drug dealer, a handful of people whose occupations I never learned. As a result of this, I was already wealthy. Although I had agreed to give half my earnings to Scorpia in return for the training I had received, I felt this was completely fair. I just got back from an assignment in Cape Town when I received my next target sent to me through a fake eBay account on my computer. This was a clever system. First of all, I had to open the correct website. Then I found a second-hand Honda motorbike for sale available from a dealer in Paris. The bike was in poor condition and the photograph made it look awful, so no members of the public had been tempted to bid for it. But exactly 12 noon I entered a bid of my own, £1,955.45. This was actually a password, 195545. The moment I did this, the bike disappeared and a second window opened up showing me maps, photographs, diagrams, everything I needed to know about the man I was going to kill. His full name was Oskar Fyodor Jodowski, but that was too much of a mouthful for anyone. He was simply known as Scar. And I will conclude the third and final episode of this thrilling metalhead to find out exactly more about the assassin Gregorivich. Tune in to find out.